there was a press conference yesterday, and we all watched it. I was there. My dad watched it. Dad, sometimes with these press conferences, it's more interesting what the guy doesn't say, considering his job is to go out there and say as little as possible. What'd you think of?
Yeah, his job is to go out there and to pretend to be transparent, but to be obscure. It is to actually answer no questions. Because I understand they don't want to give anything away. I got that. So what Iggy said, what's most important is not what they say, because what they say is always baloney. It's what they don't say. So Iggy set up the situation.
Okay. He comes in and he does a half-hour press conference to say nothing, which is really quite impressive. Half hour of nothing. Comes in and he has a speech prepared of nothing, just thanking people. And at the end of the speech, he says, really, guys, I know you guys have a job to do. And I know you're going to be asking questions about Brandon Aiyuk. And I sort of want to head that off and just say that we want him here for his entire career. And we're having discussions. And you know, I was a player and I wouldn't want those things talked about publicly. So I'm really going to ask you guys not to ask me about that. And he said, okay, I'll open up to questions. And then it was boom, like, well, has Brandon Aiyuk been in the facility? He's like, oh, first question. No, he hasn't been in the facility. Well, have you taken calls from teams inquiring about trading for him? Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, we take calls about players all the time. Okay. And then Matt Mayoka comes in, escalating. Gotta love Matty. And he says, well, have you given him and his agent permission to seek? And then right mid-question, John Lynch decides, you know, I don't want to answer any more questions about this. And he starts looking down, fidgeting, and really imploring us to change the topic. That was how it started.
Okay, but I saw it. What he does is he looks at Matty, because he doesn't know what Matty's going to ask. And he gives him the friendly John Lynch, hey, I'm one of the guys. Look, he sees where Matty's going with this. Have you given him permission to talk to other teams? He immediately, what was he, a strong safety, Iggy?
Yeah.
He becomes a strong safety.
Yeah.
Not in my territory.
Yeah.
You're not coming in my territory.
Yeah.
And he says, I don't want to address that. When he's already addressed it twice. Yeah. I don't want to address that. And then he looks off to the other side. Anybody else have any other questions? First of all, whenever someone tells me, I don't want you to ask these questions, I'm a journalist. You don't run my life. I'm going to ask the question. Now you've invited me. I'd be a punk not to ask the question.
True.
You've invited me to do it. So they did the right thing, and Matty did the right thing. So what can we say that this non-answer, which was probably the most interesting thing of the whole baloney press conference, what does it mean? Let's try go back and forth and say what it could mean. One, it could mean we're close to an agreement with Aiyuk, but we don't want to louse it up. We don't want to talk about it. What's another possible meaning?
Another possible meaning is let's say they have a trade on the table, sort of agreed in principle with another team, but it's contingent on a particular player the Niners want being available when that team is on the clock, something like that. And they can't talk about it because there's like a 40 to 60% chance it'll happen.
I understand. And those kinds of deals happen.
Right.
So maybe he's trying to protect a deal like that.
Right.
Maybe it also could mean we're close to a deal with another team right now for a straight trade. It could mean that. The point is, it could mean anything.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it means he doesn't want to talk about it because it's ticklish. There are problems. Most likely there's problems between the team and the player. I don't want to make it any worse. I'm going to make it seem like I only want to talk about the draft, but what I really want to do is not talk about that because it's the only relevant topic right now.
Absolutely. And the final question of the press conference was, would you anticipate Aiyuk not being on the team on Friday? And he said, no, I wouldn't anticipate that, which is kind of an interesting phrase. I mean, last year he was asked the same question about Nick Bosa and said no unequivocally. We're not trading Nick Bosa. No, there's no way. And this, they said, like, we don't want to. We'd rather not. It's not our preference, and we don't necessarily see it happening. But if they trade him, they can come in and say, yeah, I mean, we didn't see this one coming. We were so surprised that this happened. We didn't intend it, but things happen.
But the point is, he was not categorical. He
No.
did not say, no way he's gone. He'll be on the team on Friday. Easy enough to say, but
Yeah.
he didn't say it. So
No.
again, what he didn't say was more important than what he said.
Yeah. What he said was he's under contract, which again seems like kind of a threat. Like, we have the leverage here. We could work something out, or he could play under his last year of his deal. Okay. Well, maybe. But there's nothing he said in this press conference that made me feel like the door is closed on them trading Brandon Aiyuk this week. And again, the most interesting thing was when Maddie asked the question, have you given Aiyuk permission to seek a trade? He wouldn't even let him finish the question when he had answered 2 in a row about Brandon Aiyuk. So it makes you think like maybe he has. Why was that the one question you wouldn't answer about Brandon Aiyuk?
Also, I want to ask you this, and I have to say, I have not talked to Matty about this, and I wouldn't, because it's his business, and I'm not in the business anymore, and all his sources are his sources, and that's what's fair. But could we speculate that maybe Matty didn't ask that question out of the blue? That maybe
That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, a really, really good journalist would know some things, and if you ask a question like that, it's almost like you know the answer before you ask it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That Matty is really good. And again, I wouldn't violate journalism ethics to ask him.
Right.
It wouldn't be right. We're friends, and it wouldn't be right to do that. But I mean, I know him. To ask, you don't ask that question out of the blue.
No.
He may have heard something and gives Lynch the chance to respond. And Lynch did respond with, shut your mouth, essentially, right?
Right. So look, here's a scenario. And I'm just guessing, I don't know, but it's possible if the Niners did give Brandon Aiyuk permission to seek a trade, maybe he found one team that's interested, and maybe he went back to the Niners and said, this team is interested, and the Niners say, okay, well, what are they offering? It's pick whatever, 17. And I say, okay, all right, well, we'll see what happens when they're on the clock. We'll see who's available. We'll see what we like. I mean, it could be like that. Okay,
Absolutely.
We'll take it into consideration, but we're not just going to trade for pick whatever 17 today, not knowing who's going to be on the clock and letting the rest of the league know, well, we no longer have Brandon Aiyuk, so we really need a wide receiver. Like, it's definitely in the Niners' interest to keep it a mystery and make this deal at the very last minute.
I have no problem with what the Niners are doing, nor do I have a problem with what Lynch is doing, with how he comported himself. Lynch is a good guy. He has to protect the organization, but it's fair for Matty to ask the question, and it's fair for us to try to unravel this knot, and to be a little skeptical. I have a follow-up question, Iggy.
Yeah.
Leading into the draft, Aiyuk is almost more important in the Niners narrative than whatever draft picks are going to take. The whole focus is on Aiyuk.
Absolutely.
Would you agree? So here's my question. Is he worth all this attention?
Probably not. Probably. He's not Nick Bosa. He's not Fred Warner. He's not Trent Williams. He's not Christian McCaffrey. He's not the best wide receiver in the league. He's not the second best wide receiver. He's the third best wide receiver in the league. Yeah, probably not. He's a very good player.
He can be replaced.
Absolutely. Because as important as wide receivers are, they're also extremely abundant, kind of like running backs.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. There's all this focus on Aiyuk more than on the draft.
Yeah.
The draft's a big deal, I guess, more than on the draft. And I don't feel he's worth all of this talk and writing and effort.
Yeah, it's like he and his agent have hijacked the news cycle.
Yeah.
Because they want whatever deal they want, and they're using us to stay in the conversation every day. One more thing I think was interesting about the press conference yesterday as an exercise in journalism. Like, what do you write about that day? I feel like a lot of people would go to that press conference, hear John Lynch say, we want Brandon Aiyuk to be a 49er for the rest of his career, and say, boom, that's the headline. John Lynch confirms that the Niners are committed to keeping Brandon Aiyuk. Like, that is not the story. The real story is, again, what he didn't say. And that's why I think it's an interesting press conference. It's like, it's 99% baloney, and you got to try to find the 1% of non-magical meat.
You know how I look at it? Whenever I went into a news conference like that, I would be the columnist and the opinion writer, and then there'd be a beat writer. It could be Matt Mayoko. Well, the beat writer is the reporter. He has to report what Lynch says. I'm getting blurry again, Iggy. See that?
I know. I think you put your hand up to the thing and go like this.
Like that?
Yeah. Now you're
What does that
talking.
do?
You had to refocus it because I think you moved your hand in front of the thing and it messed it up. But now you're back.
Oh, God. Okay. So the beat writer has to say, this is what he said and blah, 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 blah. But then the columnist can say, this is what he said, but this is what it really means. You need two people to do that job.
That's true.
Yesterday. Yeah.
You really do. Brian Salcido says, off-topic fun fact, I know you like to tease Brock Purdy about his boots and commercials, but Arizona has over 25 million acres of farmland. I live about 20 minutes from where BP grew up, and my kids go to high school with many AG and cattle farm kids. I didn't know that.
Well, great.
That's wonderful.
Iggy, do you make fun of him? I don't.
I gently roast him in a good-natured way. I think that his endorsements are just precious and wonderful. Okay. Yes. No, I like Brock Purdy. He can laugh at himself.